Good evening. My name is Helen Anthony. I'm the chair on the committee of the Committee on Finance. I'm calling to order a regular meeting on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 at 5:38 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chairwoman Anthony,
Present.
Vice Chairman Taylor,
Here.
Counselor Antoine. Here. Councilwoman Graves,
Graves, here.
Councilor Sanchez.
Sorry, I'm tired.
We have 5 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to recognize and thank them for coming. We have Councilor Espinal, Councilor Peterson, Councilor Royas, Councilor Gonsalves, Councilor Vargas. We have Madam Auditor Costa. We have Ken Cheverini from the City Solicitor's Office. We have our Policy Director with us this evening, and also Carissa and Donna. Thank you very much, as always, for all you do for us.
And so noted.
Okay, and Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 1?
Discussion and presentation relative to state mandated statistical reevaluation process and the assessment of properties in the city of Providence. The following has been invited. Michael Torella, MAIASA, VP of Appraisal Operations, Vision Governance Solutions.
Wonderful, and I think we have a whole team here. Thank you, Mr. Torello, who I believe is online. And we have a whole team to swear in, so Madam Clerk, please swear everyone in.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Raise your right hand. You swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The penalty stage and names for the record, names and titles.
Lawrence Grant, Senior Chief Financial Officer, City of Providence.
Anthony Davey, Commercial Appraiser, Vision Government Solutions Incorporated.
Michael Murphy, Deputy City Assessor.
Janice Muscatelli, City Assessor. Sarah Sawyer, Finance Director.
Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, and did we get Mr. Torello online?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm right here, Mike Torello with Government Solutions.
Okay, great. Who would like to take the seat at the end of the table while we listen to Mr. Torello? Okay. Oh, wonderful. And we do have a presentation. So I would like to mark the presentation for the Special Commission for Taxation and Revenue, Office of the Tax Assessor, dated October 2023, as exhibit number 1. We have a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Anderbaugh, seconded by Councilor Graves. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. We also have a Vision Government Solutions document entitled Providence Reevaluation Fiscal Year 2025, project update, date March 4th, 2025. I'd like to mark this as exhibit 2. May I have a motion?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Anderbaugh, seconded by Councilor Graves. All in favor? Aye. All opposed. And I think that's what we have so far to be heard. And I think I will turn it over to who is presenting, Mr. Torello.
Yes, so Madam Chair, many members of the council this evening, you had asked that the representative of the Vision Appraisers join us. Basically provide information, if not orientation, on the process known as reevaluation. This is a process that is conducted once every 3 years. Just for the record, the document presented as presentation, special commission, the assessor saw fit that this was a document that should be entered the record because it's far back as October of 2023. During that impanelment, of which I was a member, this was asked by the committee, and it did explain that process. So I wanted to be clear that as early as a year, some months ago, we have put on record as to how that process does work and any recommendations. So with that, we thought that Vision would lead this evening by discussing what they've determined to be a reval, including trends and information that is now part of the public sphere. Impact notices have been sent out, appointments have been made, folks have been visiting with representatives of Vision. And then at that point, I think they're motivated, including in particular, representatives of the assessor's office to answer questions associated with what they can answer on reval evaluation.
That is fine, thank you.
So with that, Mr. Knell will take it away and what is commented.
Mr. Torello, thank you for joining us. I'm sorry you're not well.
Yeah, I'm a little off today, but I'm fine and just a little sore in the sense of driving and everything, but that's okay. We'll go through this and I'll try to explain things as well as we can and answer any questions that I can.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for accommodating me. Thank you everyone for having us. Again, I'm Mike Torello with Vision Government Solutions. I'm the President of the Appraisal Division. And I think it was mentioned earlier, pretty well that there's a document there that kind of explains the general process of what we do. This was a statistical update. So in this case, we did inspect all the sales and permits, and we did a review, external review, drive-by review of all the properties. The purpose of that is to gather all the information, make it as accurate as possible, to be able to then have accurate data as we start to do our analysis of the city, looking at all the different classes of properties. So this analysis is basically considering the three approaches to value, which is the sales that would occur, looking at new construction and construction costs as a support of the sales, and then for the commercials and industrials and the mixed use and apartments, gathering market information for the income approach. So this consists of gathering gross rental, market rental, not necessarily contract, but what's current in the market for this year for rates and rents, gathering vacancies, rates, expense ratios, and then determining capitalization rates. Once we determine a net operating income, we use a capitalization rate to capitalize that income flow to a present value. So that's the other third approach. So depending on the type of property, we'll consider various data as we go through and look at this information. So that was the process that we did. Once we got all the information in, we would go through and gather sales for the residentials over the last year, but we would also look at the 23 sales for trending and what's happening. And then we would look at these sales in many various ways. The purpose is to make everything as equitable as possible. So there's a lot of things we look at. We look at the style of the property, colonial, Cape, office building. We look at the full group class of those categories within them, single family, two family. We will look at things based on their building size. We'll look at things based on their lot size. We'll look at things based on geographical neighborhoods. Those are designated based on geographical areas and housing stock. We'll also look at price quartiles, which are basically high-end properties or high sale properties, lower sales properties. The idea is to look at all these variables to determine value in an equitable and market value price, or in this case, assessment. So the first document that we have, the first page, is the overview of the sales, median sale prices for the residential, single family, two family, three family, four family, and condos, identifying the median price for the 24 period compared to the 21 period. We thought we would show you basically what was the increase back then for these classes of properties to the increases now. Over the past 8 to 10 years, there's been a very strong market with low interest rates. They're up a little bit now, but they've been relatively low. There's been a lot of demand. So one thing that's happened over the last year and a half or so is that interest rates have gone up. So if you look at the document, you'll see that the number of sales last time for single families was 817, and now it's 530. So that's quite a variance. But what has happened is this has dropped a lot due to more demand than supply. And one of the big changes over the last couple of years that are slowly starting to stabilize the value is that the interest rates being higher, people still wanted to buy homes, but a lot of people did not want to sell their homes because they had a very low mortgage. And to then sell it, they'd have to go back out into the market and get a higher number. So that still kept the market strong because there was less sales. So it's kind of a balance where it slowed down a little bit because of the interest rates, but the volume of the sales also made it still competitive. So you can see from this chart that it was single families, median price is 425,000, and then the median price from last time is 304. So for this sales base, the percent increase change for this group of properties was as seen in the right-hand column, 40% for the single families, two families 56, three families 60, four families 58, condos are 21. Variances are similar to last time, other than the four families having a much larger increase now. The volume, obviously, for the sales was almost half. So that, again, that pushes up the value. So this is just kind of a nice starting point to show you where we were at last time, what we were dealing with increases last time, where we are now, and where we're dealing with increases now. So Chairman, do you want me to just keep talking or answer questions later or?
I think probably we want to hear what you have to say. Yes, if you wouldn't mind moving through the data, and I know all my counselors have questions. So yes, if you would please continue.
Okay. So the next data that we have on the next page deals with more detail now. We just looked at the classes. Now we're looking at the median sale prices and the change from the previous median sales ratio based on these prices to we've adjusted them. So the building type, obviously, are the various types of properties in the community. Anything from bungalow, capes, colonials, custom homes to 4 families, 5 families, and so forth. And in there are the count of the sales, the median sale prices for them. And then when we start the job, we're at a certain assessment level. We compared those sale prices to those assessment ratios based on the assessment sales that we have, assessment that we have now. So you can see, like, for bungalow was at 72%, Cape 69, Colonial 76, conventional 69. Our goal was to get these properties close to market value, and the ratios are to the right. Usually the assessor will identify what percentage of market value we'd like to be at. We're in the 95% range of the market values. See the previous COD. COD means coefficient of dispersion. What that means is that's the variances of the sales to the midpoint being the 95. That's that bell curve that's everyone's always seen, where in school, the higher the bell curve, the closer everything is. So the lower the COD. The wider the COD, the less consistent it is. Over time, as the market changes and the properties get adjusted and so forth and have permits and everything, the COD from last, based on the sales and the assessments, are higher. But once we go through and look through all the variances, look at all the different types of properties at different levels, we get the current CODs at a much lower level. Underneath, in most cases, they need to be based on IAAO standards for the nation. For the singles in the 10 or lower, for the 2 families, the 3 families, 12 and lower, for the commercials, 15, and for vacant land, 20. So in this case, you can see that most of them are on the lower end, with now that they've been adjusted for all the variables that we look at when we do the values. Okay, so now we're going to look at, we've looked at the sales, we've seen the percent changes, we've seen where we were, we see where we are now. And now we can show you something overall increases in assessment by the class for all properties within that class. So based on that, they will be somewhat similar to what's on the sales, but the sales may be slightly different in their percentage increases because they may not encompass all of the types of properties that are in the single family class. So they may be slightly different in their percentage increases. This is the end result of all of our rates and tables that we've put into the system. And then we go in and have these old to new changes from the last time. This also includes any new construction and changes in the properties through the reviews from last time. So some of this increase is also physical changes to the property along with the market change. And you can see for the single families, we're at 32%, two families at 46, three families at 52, four families at 51, five families at 46, condos at 32, apartments at 32, and mixed use at 50. Mixed use, to identify what that is can be a one family, two family, three family with some type of mixed commercial, retail, office. So a lot of times it's somewhat of a similar type property to the 2 to 5 units. The difference is they may have an office building in it or a small store in it or storefronts on the bottom and apartments above. And that's why you can see that that's relatively similar to the 2 to 5 units. The industrials, warehouses, research and development, manufacturing, that is at 29% increase. Then all of commercial would be anything that's related as commercial, retail, office, restaurants, any type of thing that's commercial based. And all of those commercials are at 17%. I like to break out the retail and the office so that we can just get a little deeper into those. The retail was at 14%. That can be individual stores, plazas, malls, different types of properties like that. And then the office can be your small office all the way up to your large corporate office. That has not gone up as much. Some of the large properties downtown are even lower on the scale from the 9. Some of the more outskirts, smaller properties might be higher. But these are the average increases. Okay, I'm going to move on. Now, what I've done is I have identified per request that we have all the wards and the average of the previous total assessment to the current average of the total assessment value, and then their percent change. So I won't go through every one of these, but I will identify that we've done this for all the wards. And then we have, and so it's nice as you can see which ones percentages are slightly above averages and what is slightly below. And we've done that for single families. Then we've gone on and done it for two families. So the single family on this identification for all the wards is 494,000 for the total values on average now, and it was 373 previously 3 years ago. Going to the two families, again with the increases around 45%, 589,700. New assessment, previous assessment from 3 years ago, 406,300 approximately. Then we go to the three families where you get the breakout for all the wards, and we have a 50% increase on average, 663,400 on average for the assessed currently, and then the previous 441,900 roughly. Then we'll go to the four families, which are 727,675, previously 481,066, around a 50% increase. And then the five family, 776,389, excuse me, to 524, approximately 524,000, 48%. And then the last item is the residential condos, grand total 322,300 now for assessment and 240,100 previously, and that's around 34%. So that gives you the breakout per wards, and then also the breakout based on the classes of properties, and for the residentials, some of the detailed styles, to give you a good understanding of where we stand from the variances, all the detail work we do, breaking it up into different groups so you can see which categories went up and at what percent increase. And that's what I brought with me tonight so that you could have this information to review it and dissect it and get a feel for the changes that have occurred in the marketplace based on the market data for this time period.
I appreciate it, Mr. Torello. Thank you. Just to be one more time, I just wanted to, so the data primarily that you're relying upon is, would it be fair to say that that's sales data?
Sales data for the residentials, yes. For
Okay.
the 1 to 4 5s and the condos and so forth. And then we obviously look at sales data for the commercials, but most of the data is, because we have so much more of it, is based on the income approach for the industrials and the commercials, which I explained earlier, which is more income stream of value capitalized to a current value.
So with regard to the sales data, you have the, I believe there are neighborhood codes on the, our assessment information online. I'm just wondering what sales you look at and how close, those sales are to the particular property. If you can talk a little bit about that, because we haven't had a ton of sales. So, as you have pointed out, I think in your data. So can you explain to us exactly what comps, sales comps you use and how that works?
Right, we use all the sales for 2024, and we will reference sales in 2023. We'll look at all of them and qualify and unqualify. Unqualified sales might be like a family sale, a change of physical of the property after the sale, a corporate sale. We have codes of all these different things that we use to unqualify certain sales. So we'll go in and unqualify the sales that we're not going to use and qualify the ones we're going to use. And then we'll take and start to look at them in categories, like you said. And the ones we're showing you are some of the major classes, but also we'll break out the sales based on neighborhood, like you noted. And what sales do we have in those neighborhoods that we've designated? And how is that impact occurring for the new market? And based on increasing land, based on land sales, and there's a lot of times we don't have a lot of land sales, we'll use what's called a land residual. What that is we determine the construction cost of an improved sale. We'll take that construction cost depreciated out, and the residual is an indicator of land. We'll look at land values based on those residuals per neighborhood, per style, to try and get the components of value, the sale itself, and then the component of the land part of it, the building depreciated, and any extra features or outbuildings. Outbuildings would be a garage or a shed or something like that. All those components are priced, and then they're tested to the sales by all of those different categories.
I'm going to open it up one more question before we open it up. It appears at least that near my home, and I realize that it's in Ward 2, it looked like most of the increase in all the revals is the land. And so not the building, but the land. So the land went up substantially. And so can you just, why?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because it is a little bit more of an intangible. Whereas construction, we can look at construction costs, we can look at certain things and identify that contributory value to a building, look at depreciation schedules and processes, depreciate it, and it is a tangible item constructionally. What happens in the market is a lot of times the shift can occur in the land when there's large increases because we are looking at the total sale price of the property, and then we'll look at these components so we can basically identify them. But a lot of times they're based on these residuals, and they're also based on what's called land to building ratios, which is a contributory value of the land and the contributory value of the building, and how these ratios play out in different communities. Closer to the cities, the land to building ratios, the land ratio is higher. Going out into more rural areas, the land is a little bit lesser usually because the price points are usually lower in some of the rural areas and higher in the city, but construction costs are comparable. To build a cost here in another area can be a little bit of a locational variance, but they're usually more similar than the contribute of intangible items like the land. So when the market's going up a lot, depending on what construction costs are, in 2021, construction costs really went up a lot with the COVID area, and now they're slowly starting to level off a little bit. And so what's happened is the market value is still going up, so the land gets a little bit more land ratio wise, more contributory value to the total value. I'm not sure if I made that clear to everyone, but I tried to.
The contributory ratio is difficult from the land to the building is a little difficult, but I think what you're saying is the construction cost and the cost of the buildings, at least in 2021, was higher. And now, because the market rate is, the valuations are going up, now you're attributing more of that to the land. That's what I got out of your explanation.
That was really good.
I was hoping that wasn't the case. Okay.
I can use an example, like for me, sometimes you have luck, sometimes you have knowledgeable luck, sometimes you have dumb luck. And I know that I had a big renovation going on in my house in 19, and I thought it cost a lot of money, but people that I talked to that had renovations done in 21, the amount of lumber and costs and so forth were so much more. Then as we got into the later years now, 23, 24, 25, it slowly started to stabilize. And a lot of that's because of the volume of sales and the volume of activity going on, where a lot of times we all know that when we're selling a house, you might do renovations and materials. Well, there's been less activity, so the market has to base that in demand for supplies started to come back down. And now the market's still strong, as you can see in the first document I showed you. 3 years ago, single families went up around 40% for the sales, and now they've gone up about 40% this time. But cost did not go up as much. And so the contributory goes to the land.
Okay, one final on the chart on page 2, where we talk about the previous values, the median sale, and new value. Why are we looking at prior sales? And why are we?
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chart on page 2
Yep.
at the top, and I'm looking at your median sales price, I get that. But why are we looking at the previous value to median sale and the new value? Why are we doing previous COD and current COD? I mean, why are we doing that?
That is an indicator for us to where we start. So what happens is everything for us is a starting point. And our starting point is based on the previous assessment, because that's where things are now to start. And then what happens is we want that gauge. It's very important to me so that I can see patterns of change. Some of the reasons this is important is to see what's going to happen in the market. Some of it is so that we can explain and show to people what's happened with certain types of properties, how some have gone up more or less because of their desirability, And if we do it by neighborhood, it might be by neighborhood also. This is by style of property. So we can see that as 3 years go along, now we compare the new sales to the old values. They're not very consistent. They're somewhat consistent, but there are variances, as you can see. So the medians have variances, as do the variance of the sales to the midpoint of the new data. So that shows the previous CODs show that there are more discrepancies and variances. And then with the new data, as you can see, most of them are now close to the mid-90s, and the current CODs are brought more in line with the market data that we have now. So what happens is 3 years ago, the ratios were similar to what ours are now, and the CODs are similar. But now we've had a lot of properties that have had physical changes. We've had new sales rates go on. We've had people's desirabilities of certain types of property change every few years. People might be more interested in a one-story property instead of a two-story. As they get older, they don't want to go upstairs. So then sometimes the one levels start to be in more demand. Some people might be moving in that want a bigger house. All these things come into play as we look at all these variances.
Thank you. Now I'm going to open it up to, I'm gonna do Counselor Graves first. I'm gonna do committee members first, and then please, the rest of the counselors, I will be calling on all of you.
Okay, doing my best.
My biggest thing is the discrepancies in the percentages of the wards. My ward, which is still the same poor ward it was 3 years ago, is the highest one. Ward 12, in each category, but one, and one that we're not in, we're the highest, or we're right there with everybody else. Now you said something about the land thing. There's really not a lot of land unless you're talking about a lot of those little lots. You can't put that much on those lots. And those lots have been sitting there for decades. The only huge lot that I have in Ward 12, really, is the one on Smith Street, which has been sitting there for years because they do not want to sell it at a reasonable price. So I want to know why there's such a discrepancy in family, especially in the 3 family housing. The next one person to me, which I'm sure he's going to speak to, is in Ward 9. The 2 of us seem to have taken the brunt of all of this, and the 3 families at 60%.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, whenever you're done, ma'am.
I'm looking at what was given to me, and it says the 3 families, and I'm Ward 12. And it went from, I don't know what it was, but it's up to 60%. No one's close to me.
359 to 573, correct. So as I stated through all the data that we have, there are variances to the average. So in your case for the 3 families, the average increase was about 50%. And there were others, looking at it, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 wards that were slightly larger than the 50, and there were 2 or 3 that were much larger. Again, we look at the sales data of qualified sales to compare those to what they are, and that's where these numbers come from.
Hold on just a minute.
I just want to interrupt you, I'm sorry, because some of the reason why Ward 12 value could have seemed slightly higher is due to the number of multifamilies in her ward versus the number of multifamilies in other wards. So I just wanted to put that on the table as well, so that ratio could look a little higher compared to some of her fellow members.
Okay, well, the good part about it is, just to clarify, is we do have the chart up here for you by the differences. The single families and the two families and the three families and the 4 and the 5. We thought this would be very helpful for you. So this way we do isolate the types of properties. So I do believe if we just look at 12 as an example, and we go with the 1 to 4 families, that 12 was at 41 for the single family. It's at 54 for the 2 family. It's at 60 for the 3 family, and then it's at 56. So it appears to me that for all of them, it's more in the higher range.
Yes.
So what that is I can't actually just show you all the different sales in every category, but if we went through that, we have to realize your ward is not particular to certain neighborhoods. Every ward, the neighborhood geographical breakout and the housing stock laps over wards. I just want to make that clear that everyone knows that. All right. So I know you're designating a certain ward area because that's your area, but the neighborhoods and the breakout of housing stock and everything, as the other counselor noted, is variable within the ward. So unfortunately, when you do the math, there will be variances to the center. That's that coefficient of dispersion that we talked about. And unfortunately, there'll be some that are at the high end and some are at the lower end. But we don't value per ward. We do not value per ward. This is information that determines what your numbers are coming at. But we value at style, neighborhood, lot size, building size, all those variables that determine the components of the value. The end result is these numbers that we show you on the different wards, but I don't value by ward. So how it comes out is really based on all the other methods of market value that we use as appraisers.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I know we've moved the line somewhat in this last little section. And some of us got more streets and some of us got less streets. It was only by a few streets. It wasn't, so Ward 12 had parts of Mount Pleasant. Ward 12 had parts of Valley in the last section. And it was one of the lowest ones. So why is it the highest one now? Is what I'm asking. To be truthful with you, yes, I do know that they did some stuff down on Valley and spifted it up a little bit, and I got a little bit of Valley. But that should not make it 60% of what, this is ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm looking at everything. The only one that we're not the highest in, we don't have any 5 people. So
so you're the lowest.
The reason why is because, well, you didn't have any 5 families. So that's why we had to add more. Then I would say, okay, well, maybe they're trying to ration it out. But if you're telling me it's because of the streets, we didn't change that drastically.
It's not on the streets.
Then
It's by the neighborhood. So your the geographical neighborhood may be overlapping for assessment purposes into other wards. But because we're condensing the data, so you're just seeing specific properties to your specific ward, those ratios can get a little bit more skewed.
So you're saying because I have property down in downtown and some property over there near Valley where they have some of the stuff. So I have some that are close by other neighborhoods that have that more affluent than ours are, then we have to carry the load. Is that what I'm hearing? I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
You should probably still focus down to the city's overall averages. This is just on your specific ward. So because you may have more multi-families. Your percentage may look a few points higher than the rest of your wards. It's based off of the inventory and how the ratio is put into these wards. But it has nothing to do really with the sales analysis behind it. The sales analysis behind it is the geographical area. When we don't have those maps here to show you how that works, but if you wanted to visit my office,
I
I'm
would
happy
be
to show you.
listening. But my other thing is, if I take that into consideration, and I have no 5 families and everybody else does, by a lot, Senate have brought the average down. It should, and not make it higher. But to me, in math, if I'm taking from one group, but I have something in another group, it should, we're supposed to be trying to even it out or make it more of a thing, but you're telling me, I have no 5 families and a small percentage of the condos. Why am I just paying more for those 1, 2, 3 family houses and a few 4? And in every category, with the exception of that, is 5 families. That group is paying more. Ward 9 basically is sitting right beside me, they're paying more. If I take what you're telling me, and you're saying, well, it's because of the neighborhoods and I'm boarded with, then you all need to pay us some money, because I don't see the thing that I should have to pay, because one other area is making more than, doing more than my area. I may be boarded against those certain things, but the majority of my area are working class. They cannot afford this. They're having a fit. I'm gonna fight and scream and holler about this because it makes no sense to me. And I could not explain it to them at my ward meeting, because they too looked at this and said, whoa. Why? Why are we paying more?
I'd be happy to print out the sales for your specific ward and hear it, so that way you can see what the actual sales were for some of the data behind it. That may be.
Yeah.
Okay, and now we're gonna talk about sales. And okay, we're talking about sales. That's where Councilwoman Peterson and I are gonna run into problems, because we have the colleges. Yes, they're spending more money on that property, but it's only them. They can afford it. You need to send the bill to the college. Don't send it to us. Send it to the college. You know, or those people that are buying for them. So I hate to be screaming and hollering, but I really do believe that we need to start thinking, not statistics, people. You're looking at something and saying, oh, well, it's next to that one. They can afford. No, we cannot. We cannot, and I'm speaking for myself also. My reval went up $260,000 more than what it was. That's insane. Insane. I'm retired. My husband's retired. When are we supposed to become this? You work all your life, you pay off your house. Now got to pay the city off, and then for taxes. This is ridiculous. And if I'm feeling the pinch, I know a lot of people that are not doing it as well as I am. Not that I'm doing great, but I'm doing enough to be comfortable. But now you're gonna make me uncomfortable. You know, that makes no sense. And we're trying to keep people in the city, not run them away. We're trying to keep the people that are gonna stay here and cherish our city here. Not the ones that are just gonna come in here just to buy up some houses. They don't even live here, they live somewhere else, and they're gonna rent them out at extremely high rates. There's a problem with this. We have to figure out how we can fix this, because it makes absolutely no sense. So you can show me a map, but it still is the same thing. I should not have to shoulder the weight of the colleges. I should not have to shoulder the weight of my neighbors. If my neighboring communities, and I don't know which one it is, because Shelley and I are in the same boat.
And we plan it every day.
Yeah, so please tell us, what are we supposed to tell these people that homes that went up from $200,000, which they thought was a lot, to $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. What are we supposed to tell them? Because their jobs haven't changed. Their circumstances haven't changed. They are still living the same life. And it's a hard pill to swallow. And I hate to say this, but some of the people that come up with these things don't even live in the city. So I'm really aggravated. I'm really upset. I got screamed at my committee meeting, and I'm gonna scream my loudest now. And that's really all I have.
Thank you. Counselor Vanderbilt.
Thank you. Is it okay, I have a couple?
Of course.
Okay. Thank you for being here, especially if you're not feeling well, so I appreciate it. Can you hear me okay?
Certainly can.
Cool. And thank you to you guys for being here too. I have a couple questions. So, in the summary, like, graphs that you get, not graphs, charts you gave us, I don't see square footage, in the, like, it's broken down by style, but for the comps, like in sales, like, let's say I live on Fifth Street because I do, like, let's say, and I haven't sold my house, but like, I have this, like, let's say, for example, I have the smallest house on the block, and so, which I do, but if someone else sold like a much bigger house down the street, but it's the same style of house, does that affect the property value of my house, for example? My property value actually really didn't go up very much, this is not a really good example, but like, if a much larger house, but of the same style sold like less than a block from my house, same neighborhood, same style of house, does that affect the value of my house, or is it also broken down by size and not just style? That was a long way of asking that.
Yeah, I did mention that earlier. I said building size is one of the analytical tools we use, lot size. And then we use neighborhood, we use style, we use quality of construction. So we do run all of those ratio studies and make sure that the lower size buildings and the larger size buildings have reasonable medians and CODs that are consistent. Yes, so,
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
yeah, it's not a problem at all. The easiest way for me to explain what we do is I consider the valuation kind of like looking at a round table. When you look at the front of the table, it looks round. Until you walk around the whole table and then the back is like bent or angled, you wouldn't know that. So what we do when we value a property, let's say the sale prices are the table, the buildings, we look at all the variables that go into these types of purchases. Per square foot, like you said, lot size, neighborhood, construction, quality of construction, all the different variables that we can think of to make sure that every time we analyze it from a different look, the consistency of the data. Price quartile, low price, high price. We basically look at that as a price related differential is the term. We want to make sure that properties that are low prices aren't being at a higher ratio than larger price or vice versa. Because we could have an items that are called.
Oh, I was just gonna interrupt for a quick second though to ask, like, for some of these where the sale numbers are so low, like, how do you, like, there aren't that many sales to build this complete picture of the table from, like, if there aren't comparable sales in size or style or quality or square footage or any of that nearby, like, how are you getting to those numbers? Like,
Yeah, well, the advantage of looking at anything that's not, the advantage of looking at things that aren't specific, like a neighborhood can be specific, a style can be specific, but the range of sizes, we can put them in groupings where there's enough data. And we can go back and look at data from another time period, adjusting for time to make them more equitable and put those data sets together where we have less data.
okay, so you'd be pulling in older data too, because, yeah, because for some of these, it just feels like there's not enough data to like.
Exactly.
So you're
Yeah.
pulling in like 23 or 2022 data.
Well, 22 is kind of far away, but 23.
That's what I was.
So, and Yeah, and I mean, we can pull as much data as we want as long as we time adjust those old sales to the current market conditions. But what happens is those sales were done at a time when the properties may be different now.
Yeah.
Renovations to them and changes to them after the sale. So we tend to like to maybe look at sales that have occurred right, 6 months, 8 months in the past and maybe a few months in the future. Just so we can get a group that's closer to the sales date, but also understand we can run them by sales date quartiles and by sales date years and see the sales now and the assessments, what's the percentage variances in time? And we do all these statistics and then we can trend those up so they're even. And now instead of having 4 quartiles of time, we might have 6 or 7. Quartiles being 3 months for every quartile.
Okay, I have a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
One is, what about, vacant land, like land that's entirely vacant? How has that been treated? In here? I know there's
First we
a
have to
bunch of
identify,
vacant-
yeah, so we have to identify if it's buildable, potentially buildable or unbuildable. So if we just identify it as a site that you can build a house on, we'll set those land values similar to the ones that have the houses with them. If we have like topo issues or access issues, we'll have to make some adjustments for that. If we have stuff that's not buildable, but would be purchased as an abutter for land or something for someone else, we'd have to adjust for that.
But if it's a buildable plot of land, that's been kind of adjusted up, or most likely. I'm seeing a head shake from Oscar there. Oh, yeah, okay, I thought you were saying this. And then, I just have like 3 more. One is, when you were answering, Chairwoman Nancy's question a little earlier, you mentioned that some, sales become unqualified, and one of the ones that you listed was corporate sales. Can you explain why corporate sales would become unqualified? Like, why wouldn't we include corporate sales?
Intercorporate, sorry. So intercorporate meaning it's like a family sale. It's from one entity to the other.
Okay, but like, it doesn't have to be a family, right? Like, it could be like
A business.
BlackRock selling to another investment company.
Or it could be that it's selling to within a partner in the firm or someone else that has an entity in it. So it's
Oh, like,
intercorporate.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay.
I missed the inter, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Is that right? You mean intra? Like within the same company?
Intra. Meaning
Oh.
within, yeah, within.
Okay, you were saying inter, which is different. Okay, cool.
Intra, sorry.
And then,
Been a full
what about-
day.
yeah, I feel you. What about, sorry, this is jumping around a little bit, but what about if like a property, if one property does some upgrades, does that affect the property values around it? So let's say a property adds a mudroom or adds some nice features, does that, but it did not sell, it's just, it's pulled some permits like it should, or there are people pulled some permits like they should, and that value has probably gone up. Does it affect its surrounding neighbors' values?
What's nice about it is that's why it's so good that we do the component look. Components are, the structure, the elements, the materials, the age. So if it's variant from other properties, it'll have a variant adjustment.
Okay, but it would.
So if it's
that-
nicer now and has higher condition, the condition adjustment will go up. If it has a higher quality of grade because it renovated $100,000 or something, that quality of construction will go up. If it's larger now, the sketch will be larger and it'll incorporate a larger value.
Okay, but like if Jim and I are neighbors, or Councilman Taylor and I are neighbors, and he puts in a really nice deck, that's not gonna like increase my property value just because Councilman Taylor and I was like, a cool deck that I wanna hang out on.
Unless you put in a similar type nice deck, I guess.
Okay. And then, just gonna throw rocks.
I don't know if he wanted to be compared, but I get your point.
I don't think you wanted a comparison. Shit, I was thinking. And then on the additional pages where you break it out single family, two family, it's a lot of averages. Do we also have that? I guess a question I have, which maybe I'm answering myself as I ask it. We also have that in terms of median and ranges, because average can be, you know, Bill Gates walks in the room and the average wealth in this room like skyrockets. But like, we
Yeah.
were all the same, like.
We have it calculated and looked at a lot of different ways. We can do median, we can do mode, we can do mean, we can look at ranges. We have all that. There's just no way I could give you all that tonight.
Okay, is that something we can access?
Yes.
Okay.
I could get that down.
Okay, I think people just have a lot of questions. Oh, and then I had one other process question, which might be for the city, but might be for you, I'm not sure. Why was the period of time for making appointments so short? Like, I feel like people got their letters and then it was like, there was like 2.5 weeks to make an appointment and everyone was like, but like, I luckily had a community meeting like right in the middle of that time, so to make sure people understood it and stuff, but like, it seemed pretty short.
That's the standard time frame that we've given every, rebound. We have to have a cutoff date and we have to get through this hearing process as efficiently and quickly as possible,
Yeah,
so that we can get to our budget and have true assessed values to work with. A hearing is simply just for residents to have that opportunity to have a one-on-one
yeah,
with the company and point out any issues they may have with their specific properties. They
Yeah.
don't have deck rooms, everyone's square footage, they don't have a deck,
Yeah.
whatever the issues they may have, they can bring to the company. If they don't have an opportunity to get an appointment with them for any reason whatsoever, we will try to accommodate small requests internally
okay,
before the bills go out, but we're very limited on time, because I have to freeze this data so that we can work on our budget.
yeah,
So they always have the opportunity after the bills go out to go through the traditional process where they have the first right to appeal to the assessor, and then they get to go to the tax board and review if they're happy with the decision made at the office line.
okay, so
Okay.
like in a month's time, they realize like, oh my god, you know,
Yeah.
okay, they can do that after the tax bills.
Yeah, of course.
Oh.
Yes,
Let me
yes.
ask a clarifying question. Just is the process, the appeals process, do you have to do the informal meeting with Vision Government Solutions in order to follow your appeal with the tax board?
No, this is a courtesy, provision that we put in the contract when we go up with it. We ask that the company has this time set aside to meet with the residents and have this opportunity. It has no bearing at all on their ability to appeal after the bills go.
So from the date that the bill issues for 90 days, they have the right to file their appeal with the tax board.
Yes. Of course.
Yes, Madam Chairman of the committee of the council. Your appeal rights cannot commence until there is a levied bill upon the taxpayer.
Okay.
So as the assessor points out, this is a function that allows for review of the property impact. And is there something that may be wrong? Property size, number of bedrooms, number of baths, etc., which could make a difference in value. So that's what this process is for. The official appeal commences only after the bills have been sent and elected.
Thank you. Okay. Now,
Yeah, I'll just add one thing to that. We consider this part of the valuation process that we're doing. Because doing statistical and even looking at the outside and getting into a lot of properties, no one knows the property better than the taxpayer. So for them to bring more information to us will just make the data better, which makes the values better. So nothing's finalized now until this valuation review based on the appeals with the taxpayer is completed. So they're kind of part of our team. We look at it as giving us more information to make it as accurate as possible. Because it is, as mentioned, informal.
For Sanchez,
Thank you,
yes.
thanks, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Michael, for the information. I don't really have any questions for you, sir. I'm pretty, I think at this point, informed on the process. What I'm, proposing or more interested in talking is with, friends from the administration and my fellow colleagues is like, we get these numbers, you know, we understand, and that was my biggest concern with the assessor, brought out, is we could go through the wards here all night, and, you know, there's a lot of, you know, scary percentages increases. What sticks out to me the most is, the numbers from 2021 and 2024. When you look at single family, two family, three family, they're all around 50% increase. So that's in a 3-year time frame. Twice that's happened. And I don't know if we went back another 3 years, it would be similar, but that's not important at this moment. 2027, are we gonna see another 50%? And back to the point of, you know, being a resident of Providence is what kind of city do we want to see ourselves in? What we're seeing right now is that any investment, anyone that, you know, is a huge fan of capitalism, looks at this and they're like, oh, I need to go invest in Providence. With these increases of value, I'm gonna make a shit ton of money, excuse my language. So that's where I'm, you know, interested in having a conversation is, you know, we're seeing the numbers, but like, what can we do about it? Like, what's to say, friends from the assessor and Chief Mancini, that we just knocked the value of every house by 25%? Like, is that something we can do? Like, what? Just what I'm getting is like, this is just a bunch of numbers, you know, we could tweak the formula. What can we do as a city to ensure that we don't see this again? And I'm more interested in trying to stop this now. Like, I really don't feel comfortable, and I don't even know, like, do we pass this? Do we approve this? Is this a done deal? Like, are residents, you know, on the hook for these assessments outside of going through the appeal process? Because yeah, I mean, this is just unsustainable. Like, this is insane. Someone that, you know, bought a house in 2021 and not even 3 years later, their house is worth so much more. And, you know, we go to fixed incomes and salaries, you know, are definitely not keeping up with the prices of these values. And yeah, I mean, this is,
You have to understand that this is done based off of what the market is calling for sales in the area. This is not a number that we are just applying to the properties. It's what the sales in the city have actually brought in increases over the last 3 years since our last reval. So you're looking at what, 11% a year, sales trends have gone up. There's nothing we're doing particularly to say, we want the values to go up 50%. The next reval, the values may only go up 10%. I don't know what the market's going to look like, the real estate
Right.
market.
yeah, no, I get that we're not doing it.
Market is what.
No, I get we're not doing it intentionally, but that's why I'm bringing this up. Like, what can we do to try to stabilize this market? You know, obviously outside of, you know, upzoning and different policies. Like, what do we just accept this? Is this just capitalism? And, you know, we know that, but I mean,
Yes, all right.
what else can we do though? It's just like,
Discussion here, it's not. So are you finished with your thing?
yeah, I mean, my question is,
No, wait a
what,
minute. We have to get the chief. I'm sorry, can you put your hand down?
I mean, my question is,
I'm just simply saying I would like to speak at some point.
I'm
That's it.
going to recognize you, but you're blocking my way to the chief. Chief, did you have any, I guess the question that needs to be answered, is there anything that we can do on the revaluations? They're mandated by state law. They follow a, procedure. Is there anything we can do as a council to either not accept them? Or, I think that's what maybe what you're asking.
no, so I mean, the questions I'm getting to is, I mean, what, if any, discussion of postponing this a year? When did this like start in action? Because I know, like, for us as city councilors, the big, you know, confusion or talk in our neighborhoods is that evaluations are happening and there's constant news coverage of 7-8%. You guys listening to my?
Yeah.
No, just making sure. So when did this start? Like, why didn't we postpone it, or was there discussions around that? Like, that's what. I'm more interested is like the process, because you know, we have 2 weeks to meet with our friends here. It seems like the process needs to be looked at, in my
It's a
opinion.
state mandated law, we don't have the option to postpone it or.
So we could go to the General Assembly and ask for a postpone. So that's my question is like, did we see if that was an option? Or did we like look into that as a possibility?
So, Madam Chair. 3 years ago, the last rebound, the same conversation was released as whether we should, in fact, go to the General Assembly and enact legislation to postpone the rebound. The assessor recommended, as she is today, had said that in her considered opinion, which I value, that it would not have made a difference. In fact, it probably would have made it further deterioration of the value being higher. I think. So we went with the rebound 3 years ago to stay on track. There were communities in Rhode Island, namely, I believe, Warwick, in the case, that chose to go to the General Assembly and in fact receive legislation approval to postpone their rebound. I think if you were to ask those communities what difference it made no difference. In fact, they then had to go back to their communities the year later with values that were even higher in that cycle. So we had in fact always followed state law. This is the statistical rebound. Out of every 9 years, there were 2 statistical. In the 9th year, or the 3rd one, it's called lists and measures. That means those are revals that are actually conducted throughout all neighborhoods. In fact, where appraiser personnel are actually trying to inspect properties up close. That's the full reval. But it should be noted that in any reval year, while those values are the values that were provided based on sales, permits, other conditions, the assessor's office working with finance as part of our team, there is a process known as tax equalization. So you start at the values that are there today. We're required by our tenets of our profession to lower the rate as low as we can to get back to the revenue of the prior level. That's the first step. It's called tax equalization. And that has been applied in every instance, in every reval that has ever been conducted in this city and under my direction that I'm aware of. Then the process commences next to submit a balanced budget. So from that point, you begin to grow the budget as you need to, and the rates begin to change. What makes it more difficult, and the assessor will attest to this as well, is that we're governed by racial imposition based upon rates that say the commercial rate can be no greater than twice the rate of occupied. That's another parameter that boxes the city's calculations into. So with those constraints, the assessor has to work as many models as prudent to arrive at what's fair, what's equitable. Again, all within the tax equalization rates, then beginning to rise to meet the budget demands. And in every reval year, I can't recall a year where there was a need to exceed that the 4% cap, because we're able to manage the affairs of the city within the new values, with the adjusted rates being lower, and then under the expenditures that are functionally normal for that. With due respect, what has caused this conversation separate from levy, separate from reval, and the next conversation associated with matters above the cap has been the new burden to the city associated with the additional cost. So that's a conversation for another time, Madam Chair, but I wanted to just say that there is a process that we follow, no doubt. And it's not just arbitrarily accept those values for what they are, but we don't have the ability to alter them, like reval appraisers have done in the field. They're relying on sales data, permits, and as they point out, things that come to their attention, including this process now known as the hearing cycle, as Michael has pointed out. Property owner might find that the square footage is incorrect, the number of bathrooms is not correct, the condition of the property is not correct, et cetera, that may lower their revision. They will submit that to the assessor's office. That process will make its way into the ultimate final levy values that will be accepted, again, based on the process of tax equalization, lowering rates where we can, and then building the budget as is necessary to set our budget. This is not a new process, it's a process that we have used repeatedly.
All right, I'm just gonna, are you finished?
No, I'm not. Just a follow-up question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. You said, what's so this is a statistical evaluation. What's the other type and how often does that?
Mandatory, and every three-year cycles, 2 out of the 3 are statistical, and then the third one will be a mandatory listed, every listed measure. In the field, known as knock on every door. Try
Is
to get
that,
access
is that by state law or
by
what?
state.
Is there a possibility, I'm sure there's a cost associated, but it seems like at least like for my neighbors, they would feel a lot more comfortable if, you know, there was people out in the neighborhoods going door to door. Is that a possibility to do that every single
No.
evaluation year?
No, it would not be the proper procedure, first of all, state law allows for the statistical, because not to put extra burden on the communities, that's the first thing, the cost associated with conducting that survey. But it's also based on, tried and true and previous, best practices that demonstrate that there's not a need for mandatory knock on every door, inspect every home, if you could gain access to every home. And that's in any community, anywhere in America, not just in Rhode Island or, you know, Providence. So that process, and it's based on known sales activity, permits which generally lead to greater value because someone pulled a permit to do additional work. And all of the other tools that the appraisal firm will use, you heard Michael say that, you know, where they will do some inspection of an area where there were multiple sales to determine whether those sales met the criteria of the neighborhood. I think you could explain that certainly better than I don't possess those credentials, but in the three reval cycles, 2 statistical followed by a mandatory list of measures.
Just the last thing, can you explain the taxation equalization thing? Cause I think that's something that's not, you know, properly messaged, within our community.
So in any period where there is rising values, normally, including if they were not as large as we saw based on sales, the function of tax equalization is a function of the assessor, and certainly she can attest this as well. Process is you bring the current rate classes of property as close as you can downward to equal the revenue that was generated in the prior adopted levy, so that you're at revenue neutral.
Right.
Giving the benefit of the rate going as low as it can go against the new higher values. That's known as tax equalization. But with due respect, any municipality have continuing needs for their budget, and then I use the expression, then the budget, you grow the budget, then by revenue necessary to meet the budgetary needs, and hence the rate rises with it, to get to an adjusted rate that would then be satisfactory to the municipality if their needs were met by growing the budget. Again, then the next condition associated with property classification, which is a Rhode Island state law, that you have to look at all classes of property, commercial, residential, owner occupied, non-owner occupied, and 6 to 10 units, to determine have you fall within the parameters set by state law that generally says commercial property rates can be no greater than twice the rate of owner occupied units. Those are the conditions that establish the assessor's work in arriving at revenue models that are necessary for the administration when we're going through our budget process to arrive at what revenue will we need to establish a balanced budget, amongst other things, including other revenue streams or reduction in expenditures. What I think has happened this year is, besides the public knowledge of rising values, is that there's discussion about the cap, and I don't want to go too far on that, Madam Chair. It was expected to be discussed this evening, but
Okay, I mean, we're gonna discuss.
there will be a discussion on that at some point, but just talking about getting revenues equal to what's needed to balance our budget at the cap would be a process that we have developed year over year over year. It's a discussion, I think, that we've heard in the mix of that, what happens when we need to go over the cap. Obviously, that's a whole different discussion.
But I think it's important to at least like acknowledge it, because I mean, it's impossible to separate, you know, obviously here in these tables, we can separate it, but in our communities, neighborhoods, the talk in our streets, so that's all one, so.
That's correct. Thank you.
Counselor Sanchez, what do you think?
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna we have one question here, then
Wait a couple.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Wait a couple.
Oh,
Okay.
all right, 2. and then-
So I just want to bring some things to perspective, and just to follow up on the councilman. So when I moved in the city in 1988, I paid maybe 170, 180 for my house. That I had moved into the city for the fireman. So when I sold, I didn't want to sell the house, but a few years later, as everybody can remember, the housing crashed. So, and then they wrote out this, they didn't have to move here. So I went from like 180 down to maybe, I don't know, 110. So when he talks about like, oh, can we skip a year? When he's saying that, I'm just going back to, because last 3 years ago, my taxes were based on probably about 250, 240, 250. So if we skip that year, which it was 304s, 300 to average. Now, imagine now my house is at 422. Imagine if I skip 3 years at 240, say, now we're on a 4. Imagine the calls and everything we get then. So we, obviously, I just want to put that in perspective. We can't do that. I think we all know that, but imagine, oh my God, my house went, and even houses in my neighborhood this past few years. Like, it was a family moved out, they redid the house, did it all over. And a single family house on Stanford Avenue. So it went up for sale for 420,000. Oh, in 1988, I would have laughed at 420. I mean, east side maybe, but not for those prices, but not for the 480. The thing, they bid it up to almost 500,000. That house went for, so what's happening, like the councilman said, it's demand, there's not enough houses, they're out there. If I put mine up for 422, it slowed down a little now, but they probably would have bid it up to higher, and I would have thought years ago, that's crazy. But I just wanted to put that into a little bit of a perspective, as everything is going up. I mean, some year, hopefully, maybe they'll go down, but I don't see that happen. But I guess my question is, I got two. One is to the assessor. As far as how many percent, if you had to guess, how many percent out of the whole city appeal the process?
As of this morning, we had.
No, roll the clock back to say 2021. If you had to guess, like 5% of the whole city? Or do they just say? True appeals, yes.
About 2%.
Yeah.
2%. Okay, so it's not a big number.
I just done those analysis over and over again.
Okay. All right, I guess my last question would be, to Michael. You still there, Michael?
I am.
So what other, municipalities, towns have you done in Rhode Island? And also, do you see the same results?
Yeah, we're doing 9 right now for this cycle. Warwick and a bunch of others. And yeah, the patterns are across for a 3-year period. Yep, anywhere from like maybe a low of like 30, 35 to a high of 45, 50. Obviously, Rhode Island has a lot of variances of types of communities, Newport and other areas, but that's about what we're seeing. Yeah, I've been seeing it for 10 years in the New England area, 10 to 12%, 10 to 15% a year. But last year in Massachusetts, they do statisticals every year. So I saw about a 5 or 6%, 7% change, which was low. And I think it was really because interest rates went up, but I was thinking it would flat out, but because there were so few houses, like you said, it still went up. But we don't know, because now we seem like interest rates are going to go back down again. It's starting to tinker back down, which will increase probably more houses being on the market, because people will see, oh, it's close to what I have for an interest rate now, so I can sell it. And then maybe the volume will go back up,
It'll be more
but the interest
revaluation.
rates will go down, so the values may go back up even more.
Right. Well, I think the revals will go through the roof. As far
It's
as,
I'm in this business for a lot of years, and I'm just amazed at the last 10 years, because I agree with you about your salaries and all these other things. It's because people don't look at the sale prices. They look at their mortgage amount. And when interest rates were 2.5%, 3%, that's what fueled these big increases. They could get so much more. Now it's up to like 5 to 5.5 or 6. But there's no sales, so it still goes up. It has slowed down a little bit though.
okay, thank you. I'm done.
Okay, before I get to Counselor Consols, I was very remiss in not recognizing Pro Tem Pichardo, who joined us quite a while ago. But anyway, I'm gonna go right to Counselor Consols.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I have 4 questions, but they don't require lots of explanation. Number one is, given all the residential data that we have here, can we have a breakdown of the commercial properties in each of our wards? I think that would be very helpful because Chief Mancini, you keep talking about the conditions here, but if we only have half the equation here, we're just looking at residential data. We need to be looking at the commercial data also. So is that, Michael, can you provide us with that information?
Yeah, I think we can, yeah.
Okay, and if that could be broken down ward by ward, that would be very helpful. Number two is, so the methodology, when you talk to our constituents, I mean, this stuff is it's too complicated. There's so many variables here. And I know it's probably impossible to put this stuff in writing, but is there something that you can at least put in writing that is maybe clear so constituents can get a sense of how these variables are worked out in this methodology? I know it can't be maybe as prescriptive as a formula, but is there like a one sheet that says, you know, this is how we assess properties? It's based on the sales, the type, the lot size, neighborhood, market value. That's a lot of variables, but is there a way to do that in a very simplified fashion that we could like send out to our constituents?
I think we can put something together like that that gives the components and the process.
Okay, because again, and that might be very confusing to some, but at least it'll be transparent. Number three is, so I'm presuming as we get more of this information out and as people receive these notices, there might be more of a demand increase on the informal reviews with your office. Is there an extended deadline there? Or is that date capped at March 7th and there's no wiggle room there?
I actually spoke with one of his colleagues this morning, and we have extended some phone hearings times for about a week. But those dates are only gonna open up as the need comes in. As of this morning, we still had about 200 of our original time slots open for hearings to be scheduled. But we recognized that there was a high volume of calls yesterday morning coming in. So we were able to put some more time on for phone hearings, strictly phone hearings, because they had already scheduled their staff to be on other projects, but they're willing to take in some extra phone hearings. So as those appointments come in, they're gonna open up further time slot, but I have to have a drop that dead date of the 21st. We can't go any further than that, or else we won't be able to work on the budget.
Understood.
Probably.
Okay, and my final question is, and maybe this is something that needs to be discussed later on in finance, but you know, we keep talking about these residential rates. We don't have the commercial rates, so that's not really helpful as we think about the conditions here. Do you anticipate that because of the higher reassessments here, there's going to be a potentially, maybe you can't answer this question right now, this city question. Do you think there might be the potential that we will be lowering both the residential and commercial tax rate to accommodate our budget for this fiscal year?
The potential is certainly there.
Oh,
Just due to the natural growth of the
the
valuation,
valuation.
and the confines of the ratios that we have to stay within the tax rates, that the rates are gonna come down. At what level they're gonna come down, I don't have those to share with you right now, but they just, by the shared data set, the rates have to come down.
Okay, that's really good to know. And the last thing connected to this is, as a municipality, and I'm gonna be introducing a resolution in support of this, and I hope that we'll at least kind of look at this, because there's so many people in all of our neighborhoods who bought their properties, particularly in my neighborhood, Fox Point. We've got a lot of elderly people on fixed income who bought their property for decades ago. And their revaluations just go up and up and up, and they can't afford those massive increases. With the city, we open to something like a circuit breaker where we're looking at income of a resident because their income might be fixed, but their property values keep going up. Is that something that we could potentially look at as a mechanism to help low-income residents who may not be able to pay more in property taxes? Other municipalities have done this. It's a good mechanism to help people who are getting priced out of Providence.
We do currently have an elderly exemption, indigent exemption, which is for people who are.
Well, an exemption is different than a circuit breaker.
It is, we don't have the circuit breaker, that would have to be a discussion we had outside of meeting between the council and administration, but I'm just letting you know, we do provide some assistance for those individuals.
Great. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councilor Vargas.
Thank you very much. My question is to maybe to Mr. Mike or the administration. Is about the empty lots. So the land doesn't produce nothing, produce weed. That's what it produces. And you have to keep it up clean, and then they couldn't clean it, you get a citation, but if you don't, why these empty lands went up $100,000 almost each one? What data do you use based on what, Mr. Mike? To evaluate and a piece of land more than $100,000 each one?
I think again, the intangible, the land has been something that's really has been desirable. There are sales and there's indicated extractions that indicate that that's where the value increase is the most, is in the land. It's hard to get into it right now, but we can run stats and show you different sales and things that have occurred that really indicate that that's where the contributory value was, whereas a few years ago it was more in the buildings. But again, they went up so much in construction that they've leveled off, but the values are still going up, so it leans more toward the land. That's what kind of what I said earlier, but it would be, I'm sure we can gather information and get more details to you, but that's what we found in our analysis.
That was a bad analysis, because you telling me if I can crash my house, destroy my house, and I will get more money for the land than the little house I have. That's basically telling me. That's a bad idea to use that kind of data. I don't know where you got that one from, but the thing is, we're not making $30 an hour, neither $40 an hour. So millionaire people come and buy next to me and buy a house for $1 million. Then when you do the revaluation, you say, oh, you got $1 million house next to your door, I'll have to compare you to this property. That's insane. What about the like 88 or 90 years old senior person lives next to that house and she's on a fixed income? She won't be able to pay the taxes because my dear friend came from California. Anybody from California? No, right? Okay. So anybody came from elsewhere and buy this property at a high price because maybe they sold his property somewhere else with a great chunk of money, and he found the opportunity to invest in this city. But now you, with your evaluation, your punishment, the property owners who's been here in this city fighting against tax hikes, fighting against all type of insecurity that we have. And now we have to pay high property taxes because no matter what, our taxes are going up because of these values. And we shouldn't use a different method to come after these evaluations. And you keep mentioning construction. So you're telling me that you value my 2x4, $8 that was put in, actually that was a 2x4.5 back then back in 1928 when they built my property. And you keep saying about construction, oh, the value of your house is this much because you're using so many 2x4s, comparing with the price of today.
We look, we do have to look at your structures based on the costs and the values as of today. So it is replacement costs new, then less the depreciation of the structure. So we look at prices as now, even though the structure was built many years ago, but that's at 100%, but you may only be at 65 or 70% because of the depreciation we apply to those property as they age. So we do account for it, but it's really statistics for us in trying to be equitable. We don't set the values of the houses. The market does. The people that live in your community do. We try to make sure that when we see something that might be a variance, like maybe really high, we don't really try to, we understand there are variances. That's why the COD is 7, 8, or 9 and not 1. We don't just say, okay, there's a sale there, that's going to be the market. We try to look at groupings by many characteristics, as I've defined, to come up with a reasonable median or average or mode, which is most common, to apply. And you can see that where the consistency of the 2 families, 3 families, and 4 families, they're going up relatively even, but I'm sure there's variant properties that sold that are higher than the 50 or 60 or lower, because we try to take a grouping and come up with a reasonable support of that value.
Thank you for the explanation, but doesn't take me nowhere. The last
Well-
one last question is, I try to figure out this math. Each property went up $100,000, 1 family 100 something, 2 family 200 something, 3 family 240, and 4 family 260. So basically, we're looking for a special number. I know that you already did your work, it's already done. It's nothing that we can do. If I tell you it's anything that we can do today, so you say it's a 35% average on the whole city. And based on $425,000 value, it's 35% value in the whole city. If I say, is any way I can do, if I tell you, can you go down 12%?
We don't really work. That's not what we do. We do the values based on what the market says. And as you can see, one of the sheets we gave you, we're really not even at 100%. We're running at about 95%. These are the guidelines we get through our processes and through working with the assessors. We don't make the market, we analyze the market. We just happen to be the people that are bringing the message to you.
Don't kill the middleman, right? So, all right.
I wore my mailman blue tonight, if you noticed.
I am gonna have the chief answer your question.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, members of the committee and Council Providence, so to be clear, with due respect, the appraisal firm does not have arbitrary authority. Or arbitrary practices that they select a number, while they may listen and understand the concerns. In order for this to be fair, accurate, equitable, and be able to be representative in what the market shows, their work is governed by market, sales, permits, etc. Municipality, anywhere in America, has processes in which they have to use or utilize to form a balanced budget. And I explained the tax equalization process, the assessor well schooled in that process. It happens everywhere. It happens even in years without a revamp. Every year we get to that process to determine where we are today and how do we grow the budget to sustain a balanced budget. We will do that still. And again, I want to say one time, Madam Chair, without being unnoticed, that I think much of this is going to be driven different than the conversation associated with to the cap or God bless if it goes over the cap.
That's right, correct. Okay, Councilor Vargas, you all set? I know you're not happy with your answers, but are you all set?
Almost, I think.
All right, thank you. All right, Councilor Peterson.
Thank you. Please forgive me because I need like a version of reevaluation. I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand what you're saying at the same time. So touching on what Councilwoman Graves said, one of the questions that I have is we have a certain subsection in an area of our wards, where 3 wards touch actually, that is currently in a huge, the situation is such that there's so much price gouging because of the amount of housing that is being developed for students in a particular area, that I believe, quite frankly, that it has really affected what the pricing in the valuations in our neighborhoods. I don't necessarily believe that, and the craziest part about this is that it is generally an underserved community that's really being hit with these extreme numbers. But one of the takeaways from my community meeting last night was that, what this is going to cause is these specific developers to come and take over these properties with a quickness because our families can no longer sustain. They just can't. It's a big problem that many of us have been talking about, trying to deal with. We can't seem to get out policy fast enough in comparison to how quickly they're purchasing. But we're talking of properties that are 1,200 square feet that are going for $600,000 to $800,000 simply because they're gonna knock them down and build them into multifamilies. And what I wanna know is, because you were talking about the land versus the construction piece, I'm being assumptive, but I'm trying to follow the thought process on this. Are you, based on how you do your evaluations, and again, this is an assumption based on what you said, is it safe to say that the construction of the property or the construction of a new property isn't quite as valued or regarded in this valuation process than the actual sustained property that hasn't changed or renovated in any way?
No, I don't think so, because I think that a lot of the properties that we look at don't have permits and aren't being knocked down, a part of the basis of all the percentage of the sales that we have. And they've been changed maybe a little bit, but not major. Again, the average house really means the average house. And those are really going for, $300,000-$400,000. Again, it's set by the market. We try to use as much data. It is unfortunate that we have less sales than last time, but the fluctuations in what we have to work with what we have, and we'd look at trends from another year, and there's a lot of data. And I think it indicates that a lot of the average houses. Now, if the property was sold for a certain amount and then it was renovated after, we would unqualify that sale and then put the new number on it based on the new construction. So we try not to look at those because they're not apples to apples anymore, because now it's been changed. So we do account for all those things when we do our work.
I guess my rebuttal to that is that it becomes apples to apples in the next valuation when full streets have been taken over by developers that have done just that, property by property. And I wonder at what point we need to consider maybe shifting how, and I'm not saying that you should change how you do your job, I'm not saying that in any way, but as a perspective of how we look at things, you explained as neighborhood by neighborhood. Well, we have a neighborhood or we have 3 neighborhoods that are very much being affected by how this is happening. And a hop, skip, and a jump away, it is now a new ward and a new neighborhood. And I just wonder how much that difference in valuation is going to really start affecting. We're already seeing the crux of it now. 3 years from now, we're going to have another harder time to deal with because of exactly what's happening here. That's just a point that I wanted to make, but my next question is, with regards to commercial properties, based on what Councilman Vargas had said. There are neighborhoods and wards that don't necessarily have as much commercial as others. My ward is one of them. We do not have quite a bit of commercial in our area. Our ward is in fact quite small, and it's densely populated by an entire college. So I wanted to explain a little bit about how that kind of overlaps with other wards that have significantly larger commercial landscapes in comparison to one like mine that doesn't have as much? Or how do we, I mean, kind of to what your point was, Councilwoman Graves, is like, I think we should share the wealth here because Ward 14, we got it, so.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit on, can you just redirect the exact question if there is one to me?
Sure.
Or
Can
I
you
couldn't hear
explain
you, I'm
a little-
sorry.
Can you explain a little bit about how the commercial division of the taxes of how we do things? How is it kind of divided up as you come to valuations for commercial properties per ward?
I can't answer anything about taxes because I don't know how you divvy it up. But I know for valuation, the commercials are valued like categories, just like the residential. We have, you know, the stores and we have the office. They're all valued differently. Even though they're next to each other, they're a different animal and a different element. So how the rates are for office rents are different than retail or restaurants, yet they might be next to each other. So they're all subjugated based on the valuation process for that type of property. Of course, you consider the location for them maybe be similar, but the income stream could be quite different from a fast food restaurant and a drugstore and then a small mom and pop. Even though they might be in the same area, their generation of income and valuation can be substantially different. So we look at them that way. Then once they're valued, I can't go any further because I'm not a tax guy, even though I've worked for as an assessor.
I appreciate your summarization.
You're asking how the commercial taxes affect your ward?
No, he answered it. I really just want to understand that how it's evaluated in terms of Ward 14 doesn't have a whole lot in terms of larger businesses. We have, quite frankly, a lot of smaller businesses, but even then, their brick and mortar is not necessarily a thing in our ward. So I just wanted to understand how, if, let's just say, a Ward 4 has substantially, or even a Ward 15 who has the opportunity of a larger business like a McDonald's or a Family Dollar or all those things, how kind of that is, how that supports other wards in trying to divide the.
Well, if you're looking at your wards as paying taxes individually and not they're basically in a pool, once we create the levy, right? All commercial property in the city's value is in this one bucket. That is going to then distribute the tax rate and how the resident, that's why I said those ratios of like 2%, became 2 times more than non-owner and 3.5 the owner-occupied piece. That's why that's there, so that the most of the burden doesn't just go to one class of property, but it's not by ward, it's by bucket.
Okay.
So, all the wards are gonna get put into the commercial bucket, the owner-occupied bucket, the non-owner-occupied bucket. And we're gonna look at it that way, holistically and not individually.
Okay, all right, Pro Tem, I think you're up.
Thank you. Okay, we have some available chairs.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I don't know whose glasses are.
Gina's.
They're mine now.
Gina, she
Yes,
just
please,
texted
I'm
me.
sorry, I didn't see you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Then I'll do. You mind waiting on that?
I think this was Gina. All right. A lot of them have been answered, but just a couple of questions. One is, and then I'll say my understanding of what this process is, at least, and then correct me if I'm wrong, so that way I can communicate it better to my constituents. So my question is, and I thank the Councilwoman for recognizing the fact that we are the top 2, that the average percentage change assessed value is the top 2. And obviously we come from a community that is historically known for very underserved, but also at the same time economically challenged. So my question then to Mr. Torello
And I know this is just part of the process, just hearing your explanation and also just the questions that have been answered. My question is, through the process of appealing within these 2 weeks, what, how does how does it take it into account in terms of the improvements of the house? An example, Vargas's house, he just improved $100,000 in their house, beautiful outside, inside, versus mine, who I haven't done anything in the past 3 or 5 years. And I'm on fixed income, you know, and retired and not yet 65, let's say 60, but still very and disabled. How does that come into that evaluation in terms of meeting with you, with your team to assess the property? Does it require an in-person visit? Or how is that determined, and does that factor in terms of lowering the assessed value?
Well, the informals can be by phone, or they can be by mail, or they can be by, well, let me clarify that with the assessor. Janice, they can mail in things too?
Documentation, pictures, is that what
Yeah.
you're asking? Yeah, mail, email, we'll take data any way we can receive it, sure.
Okay, just always want to confirm.
Yeah.
So we can have it done by sending in information by phone or coming in. The thing that we do, first thing we do when you come in before we really explain the process is we'll take the records that we have and go through every element that you just talked about. We'll ask the people, what is the condition of the property? What do things look like? What materials have you changed or done? Any renovations? Does the sketch look right? Is it the style correct? Are these components correct? Is it this siding? Is it this flooring? And go through everything to make sure that we have it correct. Once we do that, then we'll try to explain to them and look at their neighborhood, their size, their condition, and compare it to other properties that have sold to see if their assessment is in the range of those sales. If we find some kind of a question or variance, or physical things we need to change, that's what it's for. I said it earlier, they're part of the process. So we'll listen. If there's things that we may have to have some go back on, we can go back and look at something. Pictures are great. Comparables, either by assessment or sales, are great. Try to have them come prepared by knowing that they're going to have to go over their records, make sure they're clear on what they have and what they don't have. And I think that will be very helpful to us. If someone just comes in and says it's too high, we can't really help them. But if they come in with physical elements and supportive items, then we can maybe help them.
So, thank you for that explanation. And like anything else, is a process, and it's complicated, and even just getting the information. But my follow-up question to that is, in your experience, I know we did it in 2021, and it was stated that only about 2% gets appealed. Is that what you just said? For the first
The market
phase?
changes. I mean, the averages are usually as low as 2 and maybe as high as 5 or 6. It's a pretty small percentage of people that come in. I think a lot of people want to come in. They might come in and then they really look at the online and they see what they have and so forth. And they're like, well, I think everything's right. And I know these sales have occurred, so they may not come in. But they might be satisfied what they saw on the records that they were accurately assessed.
So within that percentage, average, the assessment that is mailed out to us, by what's the average that assessment is lowered?
Oh, geez, I don't have that off my head. A
So,
lot
but
of
just
them
say,
are.
is it 1% or not even significant? What, meaning 0.011%?
In both aspects, the amount that actually receive an adjustment and the amount in which those do receive an adjustment, it's never such a significant
Percentage of that.
percentage.
Okay.
Thank you, Denise.
Yeah, then, in terms of the process now, people got the letter, they have 2 weeks to appeal. Or at least sit down, go through the first part of the process, and that is to call, to sit down with the, has that ever been extended?
It is, yeah, it is extended. I think she's actually gonna extend it a few days. Sure, there are times when we extend things, but there is
Hold on.
a line
You can
where you
let-
can only extend it so far.
Mr. Torello, if you could let.
The deadline for the phone call to schedule the appointment remains the same,
Okay.
but the time
is-
slots.
Which is?
Right, the time slots have opened up further, but they're gonna open up on a rolling basis as the need comes in. Cause as of this morning, there were still approximately 200 slots open from our original schedule. So, but we're gonna expand to phone hearings for an additional week, but we're only opening up the days as the need comes in. But I have to have a drop dead date of the 21st.
Because I wanted to confirm that, and how did we arrive to that, and if that has happened. That's the first, which is fine, because I'm telling my constituents, you know, Yeah.
Yeah. Going, otherwise we'll never get to our final numbers and work on our budget.
right, I understand,
Yeah.
you know, why you need to have an end date, so that way finance could start working their numbers. So that's sort of the first phase. And just to be clear, is that once we discuss and pass the rate that these properties are gonna be valued, assessed at, after that, people can appeal their taxes for 90 days, correct? After they receive the bill
Once the bill has been levied and sent.
and sent. So that would go into, let's say, up to September, let's just say, because the bills come out in July.
So it actually extends until almost November, then October. Yeah.
October, November of the end of the year, okay. Great.
We always put up the appeal applications on our website, and we highlight the date so everybody's well aware of what the date is for those first appeals due to the assessment.
Right. All right, thank you. That was just just an understanding of the process, because I know for us to, in terms of numbers and how much we're gonna be paying, or Providence residents are gonna be paying in taxes, that will be another discussion, or we should continue to have this discussion based on the fact that the budget is being presented. And then we determine what that rate is going to be. Thank you. That's all.
So I'm just gonna say something, and then I'm gonna go to Council Royce, and then I'm gonna say that I think that our communication around this can be much better for our
Right.
councilors and for our communications with our constituents. I think tax equalization needs to be, somehow messaged so that people understand that while we have, some pretty substantial revaluations across the city, people have to understand that's, that you can't apply today's tax rate to that new valuation, otherwise people are gonna be going crazy. So we have to have a better communication. I appreciate the fact that we're gonna get some sort of summary of what the Vision Government Solutions approach is, and that may be helpful or may not, but I think we have to have some sort of communication of how this all works together, including the tax levy, the 4%, the tax equalization, how the reval goes to the tax rates and all of that. And it just seems to me that we have never had a clear communication on that. I don't know if it's something that we can generate or whether, Chief, it's something you can generate, but I think we have never had a comprehensive, clear.
So Madam Chair, while we may have had opportunity to express this information in this form, the reval impact notices clearly advise the taxpayer that they should not apply the current rate of next value. So if there is a notice that says this is a value.
Chief, I understand that. That has nothing to do. I have received one. I went through the appeals process yesterday with Vision Government Solutions. I'm pretty well aware of what goes on. I had no idea. I mean, I did a square footage analysis of all my neighbors and the buildings, and it wasn't even applicable. What they said during the appeal, and they were very good, the man was very good at Vision Government Solutions, I thought he handled it well. It's comps, and so I went back to the assessor site, I did the property lookup. He walked me through how to use that to do the comp, and it wasn't working. The website was not working, the property lookup yesterday was not working. I'm not, it's working today, I don't know, people have no idea how to use that tool. I also, the sales tab, I think it is, the sales records tab, there's just no clear direction to our residents who just want information on how they can, what the information is that they should come with. I mean, sales data, oh my gosh, where do I get that? Do I have to get on Zillow? No, I can't do Zillow. But the fact that the property lookup wasn't working is, and even if it was, I put the dates incorrectly. I'm just gonna say it should be, January 1, 2024 to December 31st, 24. Well, I didn't put 01/01/24, I put 1/1/24, and all it does is come up and say no data. So, I mean, the process is complicated. I think there is a way of communicating clearly on what needs to be done. I feel like council, I'm gonna ask our staff to put together kind of a little bit of a summary as to what we should do. I feel bad that we're so behind on that, but it just seems to me that, that we can take the temperature down a little for us and also for our residents. If we have some sort of one pager on exactly how this all works together, and yes, while we should be hair on fire with our reval, the fact is our tax rates are gonna be lower. And so before people get crazy upset, the reality may be that your tax bill may not be impacted. So anyway, that's the kind of thing I think we need. I appreciate the fact, yes, it says in the letter, but that letter is far from clear. That's all I'm gonna say. So what I'm recommending to council staff is that they put something together quickly so that we have something that we can send out or distribute, or even so we can digest it and give advice to our residents. But anyway, with that, I'm gonna go to council with it.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was one of my, actually, the points I was gonna make, is that, when the taxpayer wants to go in and go through the appeal process, I know there's 3 questions that they have to ask. Is my data correct? Number of beds, bath square footage, is my value in line with others on my street? And also, is my value in line with recent sales? And then I'm asking myself, well, how do they get that information? So thank you for pointing that out, because it's not as straightforward. I'm gonna be sharing some thoughts and then have some questions for Michael. My just first pressing thought is, as we talk about this, in the backdrop of what our neighbors are facing, and us personally, inflation, utility rates have gone up, groceries, rent, tariffs, federal funding being frozen. It is really just difficult to survive right now. And I think people are feeling that pressure right now. I know personally I am, and it's just increasingly more difficult to live in Providence. I just want to share that thought off the top. I guess for Michael, you've been very gracious. I am not the most intelligent person. I'm going to humble myself. And so you giving us this kind of like lecture about, like college lecture, which I appreciate, about appraisals. I've learned a lot. I think what would help me, and I don't know if this is like a follow-up after this, is like a scenario where you could kind of break down, give us a scenario of a property, not like a real property, but where you could show us how the appraisal firm would kind of assess that property, given maybe some scenario-based variables and conditions. I think that would help me, and if I could somehow, along with those list of variables that you're gonna send that your firm uses to appraise properties, I have a really high stakes meeting on Monday coming up, and it's probably gonna be about 2 hours long. And it's all gonna be about the budget and about assessments and about the levy. And so, Michael, if I might ask, if it's possible, if your firm can send over those list of variables that you use to appraise a property before this week, if that's possible. And even, I don't even know if this is possible, a scenario and how your folks would assess a property given made up conditions. I don't know. If
Yeah, like a
that's-
sample
A
process.
sample, yeah, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, all right, I'll add that to the list, and I'll talk to my team.
Yeah,
and
my meeting was
and if I can get that for you.
So if we could get that before this end of the week, that'd be so helpful. There's also a conversation around, Council Peterson brought up. What's happening in Councilor Graves' neighborhood. When we talk about the market sets the market, this is just a thought. It drives me up a wall because there's this notion that like the invisible hand of the free market is some neutral arbiter. That eventually the market will reach equilibrium. In Councilor Peterson's neighborhood, there are student developers that have monopolized that neighborhood. And just to echo what she's saying, I'm afraid these assessments do not take into account the monopolizing effect that about 4 LLCs are having on our neighborhood. And I don't know how we get through that, but I don't think the appraisal process takes that into account. So I want to share that thought. And my question for Michael is the methodology that your firm uses, would you say that is similar to the methodology that other appraisal firms use?
Yeah, I would say it's similar. We all follow the same guidelines. How their systems work might be a little different. But I know most of the players, I've known them for years. And a lot of them actually came from a company that I came from. And the process is different than fee appraising, but it's similar in the sense of the data and the approaches we use. But mass appraisal is somewhat complicated because it's a lot of tables, it's a lot of data, and it's a lot of formulas. But the bottom line is there's 3 approaches to value, but I always say there's 4. And I know you're not going to probably believe that we use this approach, but we also try to use common sense on looking at values and looking at the consistencies. And is the data that we're doing and the calculations we're doing make sense to what we see? And are we identifying things reasonably? And we're not always fully accurate. It's mass appraisal. But that's why we want to have part of our team being the taxpayers themselves that can bring in this information. And I think you guys brought up a good point. Sometimes it's hard to understand in the computer world, for me too, certain programs and certain things that you're kind of thrust upon to have to use to gather information. I deal with it too. We all do. So trying to get a little more information out to you guys to give you more direction, I think is a very reasonable request. I'll try and work on that.
Thank you. All right, last but not least, I think.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, so I'm last, so a lot of my questions have already been answered. But I'll just make reference to the process and the method that is being used. I think this is always based on sales. And, and I think that this is where to me, it doesn't appear to be the right methodology to use. Because sales can go up and down, weekly, daily, monthly, and we're setting an assessed value for the next 3 years. We don't know what the market is gonna be by the end of the year, so basically, basing it on sales. Now, other factors I feel that should be taken into consideration, such as, the area income. The condition of the property, location, which is what drives real estate market. You know, if you don't do that, then you need to question, and you gotta base it on sale. You gotta ask, well, who's making the buys? What is property being sold to? Who is actually buying this? I don't think it's the, person that grew up in my area, let's say, the Ward 10 in South Providence, that actually is paying $550,000 for a house. You know, I tend to think that it's more like an investor, somebody that's coming from the outside. That did not grow up on Providence, that is not a Providence resident. So to have the typical family, the retirees, people with limited income, compete with investors on price, which is what you're using to set a assessed value for the next 3 years. I have to like completely disagree with that. Because if we look at the age, the average age of the city of Providence, because Providence is pretty old. And you're gonna find that you have so many people that have already retired, that worked extremely hard all of their years to pay off their homes. You know, $100, $200, $300 additional per month, that could be the difference as to whether they stay in that home or they end up on the street. Now, the speaker put in a housing package last year in order to create more based on affordability. Again, this year he introduced about 12 bills based on affordability because we have a housing crisis. We just passed a 10-year investment plan for the city of Providence with a comp plan, which is based also on affordability, is on density, it's to counteract the housing crisis that we have. I don't see where a scenario possible with this assessment that this is going to help the current situation that we have with the housing crisis that we have. It's going to make it worse. It's basically everything that we're doing at the state level, at the local level, legislatively speaking, we just flush it down the pipes. Because now we have a formula here that is just going to increase people's rent. That is exactly what the boils down to. You know, I'm not saying that we all have solutions here, but I'm speaking on behalf of my constituents because this is what I hear from them, and this is what I can see is going to happen. So we have a problem here, and I don't know what the solution is. You know, I get it. We need to bring we need the extra revenue. We need to balance the budget, but I think this is the wrong direction. We keep going back to the same pot of money, and you know what? That well has dried out. But there's nothing else there. We're gonna have a ghost. Well, we're not gonna have a ghost town, but we're gonna have a town that we don't know anybody because somebody else is gonna come in from outside of Providence and buy all the property. So we are contributing to that by the actions that we're taking today. I have serious issues with that. Councilor Graves, I sympathize with you with what you said earlier. And I think it's the same for all of us and the people that we represent. Because this impacts different community differently. It impacts my community more than other communities because people don't have the money. The median income, the community that I represent is less than 40,000. So they're not gonna be paying $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 for a home. Somebody else is. So, I just thought I'd put that out there. You know, I hate to bring all this up without a solution, but it is the feeling of the people that I represent. Thank you for the opportunity.
I appreciate that. I think that's a fine.
Well, let me,
discussion.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Let me just conclude with this, and I'll ask Mike this. Is it written in state law that you have to base this on sale? Or is it just the method that we choose?
No, the statistics are for residentials that mostly look at sales, but it's not just the number, like you said. I thought you were very elegant in how you presented it, and I actually kind of feel that way sometimes myself, being a homeowner. We do try to investigate the sales as best we can, MLS, all the different things to make sure that it's not something that like investment grade all the time. And we know certain people come in and will buy up certain properties and do certain changes to them. But we do look at the items that you said, the location, the structure, all those items. I'm thinking to myself, geez, I should hire this guy because I mean, you're calling all the things that I do. It's just that when there is some bottom lines, like we gotta have some supportive statistics. We try to do the human element and find out the right data and get it as accurate as we can. But at the end of the road, we have to say that these are the values. And we can be conservative based on what the assessor wants. We can be aggressive. We can be right at 100%. Some communities do that. Some go lower. But the key to it isn't really where the level is. It's that coefficient of dispersion. It's that equity. It's trying to get everybody else as comparable with everyone else based on what their elements of value are, right? Location, structure, size, all these things. I do feel adamant that when I talk to my team, and we have a lot of people that work for me, they're very good appraisers, we always come back. Let me look at the numbers at the end. Are we really being equitable? I don't like that. I think that needs to be adjusted. I did it today with a group of people that are working for me. No, well, isn't it close? Not close enough for what I feel. There's standards, and then there's a little better than standards. And we try to be a little better than standards. But we do not have all the answers, but we do try to be professional, equitable, and honest with you. And I'll answer any question you want as best I can, but it's not a science. It's a science with estimates and opinion. That's what appraisal is. It's not really that easy, but it's not boring. That's for sure.
I'll just add that the properties that were sold had a full appraisal, which means they went inside. And in order to get that property to a closing, there were home inspections that were done on top of the appraisal. And that those properties more than likely are 99.9% in top shape. And that's not the case for many of the properties in Providence because they don't have the condition. And that's just that. And I also do feel that for the purpose of assessment, the area median income should be taken into consideration so that we don't push people out. That's a factor.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And we do look at all the MLS, the pictures, all the interior stuff of all the sales, and we do know the difference between average and very good. So we may not be able to get into all the homes that didn't sell or get the information, but we have the techniques and the tools to identify what looks really nice and what isn't so nice. And we have adjustments in there to take care of that. So, do we have all the information all the time? No, we don't. Because we have privacy issues. People don't want you in the house. You can't go into the house. But we do use all the technology and all the key things, GIS, pictometry, everything we can possibly use to get it as accurate as possible.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank all my counselors. I'd like to thank Mr. Torello, who isn't feeling well. You really hung in there with us tonight, and I really appreciate your thorough answers. And of course, I appreciate
Yeah, I apologize that I couldn't make it. It's kind of rare that I don't get to these places, but once in a while something comes up that limits your little ability to travel,
You did a fine job, and I really appreciate all of that.
Yeah, and I thought it was a really good hearing. I think we brought up a lot of good issues, and we'll try to work with the assessor on items that you need. And if you don't have an easy job, I'll tell you that much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, we will conclude our meeting. Have a motion to adjourn. Yes, motion made by Councilor, seconded by Councilor Sanchez, all in favor.